The first thing to talk about is our last meeting minutes. If there's no objections, I will consider that approved.
Okay.
Hearing no objections. First item on the agenda is our water and sewer rate study. So I will hand this over to the administration.
Oh, don't tell me it's going to update right now. This has been my life.
Are we waiting to, I'm assuming Michael's going to be.
Yes.
If he's not on, we'll jump over to the sewer credit appeal.
Well, I am the host.
Second that.
Okay, now when we do that, when we get that going, we'll just jump on to the sewer credit appeal real quick. We had the appeal for William Schultz, the property owner at 26693 Greenville Drive, Perrysburg, Ohio. He was looking to get an appeal for a sewer bill in the amount of $1,674.94. Alice, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The description, it was a sump pump failure, and then the water powered backup sump pump ran for a period of time. He documented the replacement, and we did a dye test and confirmed that the water goes to the storm sewer.
Any questions on that?
No, I have no problem approving it.
Okay. So there'll be unanimous recommendation to approve the motion to approve the sewer adjustment. And I know we all have received a copy of let's move on to the sewer credit tabulations as we're trying to get the Zoom going. We received the update on the credits that were granted by Ms. Gotze. It looks like there was only 2 here. Is there any questions or concerns on this list?
No.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alice. Make that quick and easy for you. So,
And Mr. Chairman, I did want to, in committee, I wanted to point out, the child, that is what happened as of September 8th. They have since called and had a much higher consumption. They called in a plumber. I didn't hear what they found. So this account and address may show up again.
Which one?
okay. The 27044 Fort Meigs.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll definitely keep an eye out for that one.
Well, this is disturbing. And Kate's like, I've never signed in on this.
I've never signed in on this.
I was going to say, that's probably what's wrong.
I've never signed into this room on Zoom, so I don't understand why it keeps coming up with my name and my password that I don't remember. Not gonna lie, that's freaking me out.
Omnipresence.
Well, who is it?
Jonathan, you got us running last night. Maybe you can.
I can if you guys want me to. I mean, I have no problem doing it. I just want to start charging fees now, though.
We just gave you a pay raise. If you run again.
I was gonna say, I haven't got a pay raise.
If you run again.
Yeah, because he was not
Sure, you
voting.
did the right guy.
You know, he didn't vote to give himself a pay raise.
You have to be less, under 40.
And he voted actually yes instead of.
Oh, well, maybe I had the wrong guy.
Sorry. All right,
It's
so
just too easy sometimes.
it looks like we're getting on right now. Yeah.
Michael, are you there? Hi, Michael.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, Alice, I don't know if you want to make some introductions?
Michael, thanks for joining. Please excuse our technical delays as it took us a few minutes to get Zoom going here, but seems to be a common occurrence for anymore.
Good evening. We have with us Mr. Michael Maker, who is the executive consultant with New Gen Strategies in Annapolis, Maryland. And New Gen was selected to perform the water and sewer rate study. And the results, the preliminary results and preliminary findings are available. And Mr. Maker will be walking through the PowerPoint slides. Michael, would you want to say anything at this time and as introductions, please?
No, just thanks for having me. I wish I could see everybody else. You can see me, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just go through a brief presentation. If you have questions along the way, feel free to stop me. I think, Bridget, I need to be able to share the screen.
Is your hand up, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Joy. I can do this real quick if you need me to.
She'll go up to the bottom there.
Hit that up arrow. No, I hit exit out of that. That's gonna share our screen. You wanna allow him to share, so exit out.
Turn your video on.
Hit the little arrow next to it.
That's what I hit. Nope, I lied. That's clearly not what I did.
Is it only the host or?
I think I have access now.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep.
I'm gonna start charging. I'm just letting you guys know.
Do we have to vote on that?
Did everybody see the screen, the full presentation?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So today we're just going to talk about study assumptions, things like inflation, growth factors, things like that. Revenue requirements, which is a fancy term for the cost of the system or the revenue required to be collected. We're going to look at your fund balances, your operating and capital fund balances, your current charges and rates, projected charges and rates for the next 5 years, and then some sample bills and comparisons to surrounding utilities. So just some guiding principles and objective. The water and sewer systems must each be financially self-supporting. That is not, water should not subsidize sewer and vice versa. If you did ever need to borrow funds from one fund to the other, you could do that. You just want to make sure you pay them back reasonably quickly. Utilities should maintain reserve to provide for contingencies and unplanned expenses. That's why you maintain your operating reserve, which is kind of a rainy day fund, and then your capital fund for capital projects. Water and sewer rates should be kept as low as possible over time. See, like over time is italicized there because, you can keep your rates really low by deferring maintenance and not doing proper projects in your system, but at some point you're going to have main breaks and you're going to have something blow up, and then you're going to be having to increase your rates a lot. So the objective is to ensure rates are stable through sound financial management, system maintenance. And you do that by reviewing the funds and then preparing a long-term plan that includes proper maintenance of your system. So some of the factors that affect charges and rates, obviously your operating maintenance expense changes, you have salary increases, you have your costs are constantly going up, inflation, things like that. Right now, we're just using a 3% across the board. To be conservative, inflation is probably a little bit lower than that right now, but I think we see it's on the rise. CIP, so this is an investment in your distribution collection system, also your wastewater treatment system, and that's going to be either cash fund those projects, or fund those projects, or a debt fund. Debt service, so that's any existing principal and interest payments you're paying now, as well as any capital projects that would require debt payments. You then calculate those debt payments. Any customer changes, so we looked at your past 5 to 10 years of historical growth, and your customers look like they're growing about 1% per year, so we use that for future projections. However, in terms of water usage and then sewer generation, growth was actually fairly flat. So you may be adding some customers, but each of those customers are using less water on a per capita basis. So to be conservative, we're just assuming no growth in usage. And we're also being conservative, assuming no growth in miscellaneous revenues. So that's things like capacity charges, late fees, things like that. And then minimum cash balances. So on the operating side, we'd like to eventually get to having 90 days of operating expenses, so roughly 25% of your operating expenses. And our goal is to get there over 5 years. And then on the capital side, we'd like to have roughly a year's worth of capital costs. I think you'll see sewers already got that. Water, we're going to have to make some contributions to kind of get that up. So what is the revenue requirement? This is basically just the cost of the system. As I mentioned before, you have your operating maintenance expenses. That's your salaries, benefits, materials, things like that. Any outstanding debt, so that's any principal and interest payments you're currently paying, and then any planned capital improvement projects. And again, those can either be cash funded or debt funded. You kind of add all those up, you get your annual revenue requirement, you less out any miscellaneous revenues, and that gives you your net revenue requirement. And that's how much we need to collect from customers. This is just a snapshot of some of your capital projects. And Alice probably has some more detail on this. And in the financial model we built, we've got the entire CIP schedule. But for water, you can see the next 5 years, how much of that is coming out of rate revenue or just being cash funded through rates. The next line is just new debt. So you can see on the water side, we're not anticipating any debt funding for projects there. And then any reserve funds, so the capital fund for water, we're not really depleting any of that. It's already a pretty low balance, and we're actually contributing to it. On sewer, you've got some capital fund balance available. So we've got the rate revenues, the first row there. Again, not assuming any debt payments. And then capital fund, you can see roughly $9.5 million is actually coming out of your capital fund. So we're helping offset the required rate increases for customers by using some of that reserves on it. And then I just listed some of the larger projects and how those are being funded. So what this chart shows, these columns, the blue and green and orange, those are your expenses. So those are the revenue requirements. You can see at the bottom, you've got your operating expenses. Stacked on top of that would be your cash funding capital projects. And then that contribution to the capital fund that I mentioned. You can see it in 3 years, 22, 23, and 24. That's a roughly $500,000 contribution each of those years so that we get that capital fund up at $3 million by 2024. That blue line, the lighter blue line that's kind of flat going across, that's how much revenue you're bringing in now with your current rates. You can see that it's less in the bars, it's shorter than the bars, so that means your current revenue is not, what you're collecting now is not covering your expenses. So you'd be ending up with shortfalls. We then looked at what rates would need to be over the next 5 years, so we can kind of smoothly transition and not jump the rates up in 1 year. And that's that dark blue line. And what that represents, based on that note at the bottom, it's about a 7% increase in 2022 and 2023, and then roughly a 3% increase just to keep up with inflation in 24, 25, 26. And by doing that, that would get you to the 90-day operating target. On the sewer side, here you can see there is some debt service. So on the water, there wasn't any debt service. Those are principal and interest payments in red that you're paying right now on debt. Again, you have the blue operating expenses, green cash funded projects, and then that flat blue line, you can see it covers in 21, 22, 23, but then when you get to 24, 25, and 26, your current revenue would not cover expenses. So then that darker blue line is our proposed revenue increase, about 2% every year for 5 years. Here's a snapshot of the fund balances, and this is based on the recommended proposed revenues. So you can see the water operating fund balance at the top. This is the ending balance each year. So you can see we're not at the 90 days, but we're over time, we're planning on getting there by the 5th year. And then for sewer, you can see we're just about there. We build it up a bit and then it comes back down as we pay for some of those projects. These are the capital fund balances. So as I mentioned on water, the balance is fairly low right now. I think we used a lot of it in 2021 for projects. So this is the ending balance. You don't see the actual beginning balance. And what we're doing here is just, we're just building this one up to $3 million by the end of the 5th year. So that's where those $500,000 contributions are coming in 22, 23, and 24 for water. And then sewer, you can see you're actually starting with about $20 million or ending with $20 million in one. And so we're using roughly, $9 to $10 million of that over the next 3 years, and kind of stabilizing that fund up. These are just budget snapshots similar to what the charts show for the operating and capital funds, more in table form. So it shows you the beginning operating fund balance, any increases with rate revenue, any increases with miscellaneous revenue, and we less out those operating expenses. And then since we've got all the revenue on the operating side, we did some transfers to the capital fund since it didn't really have a revenue source. So that's where you can see the transfer to the capital fund on the operating side, and then they transfer from the operating on the capital side. And you can see the operating balances in bold. Those should match the charts that we showed in the previous slides. So it gets you to the same place, just using the transfers. And the same thing for sewer. These balances should match what's on the charts, getting to where you need to be in those balances. So turning to your rates and charges, these are your current fiscal year 2021 rates and charges. For water, you have a monthly minimum charge, which includes 300 cubic feet. And you have both an inside and an outside city charge. And then you have a volume rate, so if you use over the 300 cubic feet, you then pay a rate per 1,000 cubic feet. You can see the different charge for inside and outside. And then for sewer, you have, some customers have the 1 meter and some customers have 2 meters, so you have different rates for those. But other than that, it's fairly similar to the water. You have the minimum monthly charge, 300 cubic feet, and then the volume rates over 300, calculated per 1,000 cubic feet. So then applying those revenue increases that I showed on a prior slide, which was 7% for water for the next 2 years, and then 3%, and then for sewer, 2% every year for 5 years. That's what your current rates would look like. So your current rates in the second column, and then increasing those by those rate increases. So what does a combined monthly bill look like for a typical residential customer? So here are 3 different customers. You have a small customer, that's someone who uses right at the 300 monthly cubic feet, which is about roughly the 25th percentile of customer usage. Then you have a median customer, so roughly half your customers use below 500 cubic feet a month, half use above that. And then a larger residential customer using 800 cubic feet. So if we just focus on the bold italicized one on the second row, that's your median customer. You can see right now they pay roughly $67.85. That would go up to $70.89, and it's about a $3 increase. And you can see the increases at the bottom, both in dollar terms and in percentage. And then people always like to look at the comparison of how they are to surrounding areas, even though this may be an apples and oranges, because everybody's different. We have different source of supply, some have treatment, some don't. Some are more dense than others, customer bases, things like that. But with that said, this is what it would look like if you move to those other places and use the same amount of water that you use as a 500 cubic feet of usage customer, so that median customer. You can see how Perrysburg compares. One note, this doesn't represent any future increases that some of these other places may be doing. This only reflects whatever the latest rates they have on their website are provided. So you can see the 2021 Perrysburg rate, 5 rows down, that's your current rate. And then with the 2022 proposed, you can see it'd be slightly above Toledo. So water in blue, sewer in green, and then the total charge. So our recommendations, I don't think you're required to make any action now, but would be to adopt the charges and rates for the planning period over the next 5 years, so 22 to 26. And then you can review them on an annual basis. You don't need to do a full cost of service study like this every year. You probably have to do it maybe every 4 to 5 years. So you can have your staff, go in and put the actual expenses over the budgeted and kind of see where they stand each year and to make sure that those rate increases are holding. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Do we want to start off with any questions? I have at least 1 or 2 to go through. If we go back to those rates that actually just had it up there. The one for the other communities, I know that the city of Toledo, those rates overall are going to be pretty static. Is that the rates that are charged on top of what we're paying for the city of Toledo water? Or is this just what we have to do for our services?
Toledo, that would be what a Toledo customer would pay, so one of their inside retail customers. So we took what your median customer uses, the 500 cubic feet, and then we applied it to using the rates from the other places. We applied that. So if another customer in Toledo, used 500 cubic feet, that's what they would pay. So it's kind of an apples to apples basis.
Hopefully the administration can understand exactly, because I know that there's different water rate. The Toledo contract that we did is supposed to stabilize the rates for all the communities, and the difference is what it costs each community to take that water once they receive it to deliver it into the homes, essentially. And so that's kind of where maybe I'm overthinking things here when I'm looking at this, but I was under the impression that these rates were going to be pretty equal amongst most communities. Obviously, there's going to be some differences, but when I saw Toledo's as to where they are comparatively, I'm just kind of curious to see where we're at in that stage as well.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the rate for Perrysburg in either 2021 or 2022 includes the cost for us to purchase Toledo water plus our cost to implement and maintain our distribution system. So that is the end rate.
That's showing up there right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then to answer the question about Toledo, we're still in the rate transition period, and that will go until the year 2027. And at that point, all of the contract customers will be paying the same rate to purchase Toledo water.
And what's the
in bulk.
percentage that's going to be going up in the next few years on this one?
Well, I can tell you that in 2022, our cost will go up 11%. That's one of the highest years. It's a little bit of an uneven transition, but at the end, well, I don't know the number you're asking for.
How
I
much?
just know that next year it's 11% increase.
Okay. So it's going to be 11% for the Toledo and then another 7%.
It's 11% for us.
11%, I understand.
Yes, okay.
But it still would get passed on to the residents, if I understand correctly.
Yes, and that's incorporated in this rate that.
So that's already incorporated in the
Yes.
7%.
Yes.
Is including, that's what I wanted to
Yes,
see,
okay,
because that's a question that's gonna,
We're not adding 11% and 7%.
okay.
No.
That's your question.
No.
That's kind of where I'm like, all right, where are we at on this?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is being all absorbed in this, okay. If anybody else has any
Yeah.
questions, I know I'll have a few others.
I have a few, and some of them may not be necessarily all that intelligent because it's kind of new information to me, Michael, but how much reserve versus how much in reserve for capital is mandated or is it recommended as we go through these years, both currently and then in the future?
Yeah, so after discussions with staff, we determined that having a year's worth, an average year's worth of capital kind of on hand was a good measure. There's many ways you can do it, and you can base it on system value and things like that. But I think they thought, we agreed with the staff, looking at your projects, you had some sort of contingency for, say a pipe burst or something like that. You don't need to go out and take out a loan or immediately raise rates. You'll have some funds available. And so that's why sewer was it's already a bit high. It was at 20 million. So that's where actually using some of the sewer capital funds, as opposed to saying, let's keep the 20 million and then just raise rates, continue to raise rates. So it's prudent to help the customers and not have their rates go up as high as they could have. We didn't use reserves.
So in the calculation, and I'm assuming this is a 5-year assumption, that the sewer and water consumption or utilization will not, there will be no growth while we experience, and I know you said on a per capita basis, it would be the same, but the gross amount would change, would it not?
Yes, and that's why we look at it separately, both customers and usage. So we received historical data that showed both the growth in your customers and the growth in your usage, not just per capita, but total usage. And it showed, it showed a slight increase for customers, but it actually was either flat or some of the customers were in negative growth. So it was actually showing a decline in usage in some places. And we're seeing that, nationwide, where, people have low flow fixtures, they're smaller household sizes, conservation is educated children, so it's fairly common, and Perrysburg's not alone in that. But you are starting to see, either flat usage or even a decline in usage.
Councilman Anderson, I had the same question when we went through this with administration, and it was explained to me that it is conservative to estimate that usage will not increase because we meter usage of water. And if you factor into this an increase in usage that factors in a profit that may or may not be there. If you go off of historical data, but you go with increase is a conservative estimate on the income that we will be taking. So we may do better, but we never want to estimate we're going to get more than we actually take in.
So I appreciate that on the water side. I'm not sure I fully grasp that on the sewage side because we seem to be borderline.
We don't meter
But-
sewage, we only meter water.
But in terms of volume, we know we are borderline. Or maybe that's a wrong word.
So we only make money off of the amount of water somebody uses. This is not studying, the purpose of this is not to study actual flow into the wastewater treatment system. That's a different study as to whether or not we have too much going in.
But in a huge way, this affects capital expenditure on sewage.
Yes.
So we do care. I mean, it should be a part
Yes, but
of
we
this.
we don't want to account for that in terms of money.
But we are accounting for it because the wastewater treatment plant master plan, capital projects have been factored into this for the next 5 years.
And that's why I'm asking about the volume piece. So the capital projects are assuming that we're going to not only take care of what we
Yes.
have, that it will, whether there is or isn't
Right,
an
we'll replace
increase.
digesters
Okay.
or-
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That's,
Yes.
Go ahead.
the cost of the water has built into it the cost of treating the water.
Yes.
Right. Is that what you're doing?
No, I was talking more on the sewer side.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, the cost of treating the water, the
Well,
sewer.
no, but that's an operational thing, and I was referring to
I understand what you're saying.
the capital side.
But you have to take that into consideration too.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
Well, because I was going to ask another question that kind of follows up with this is we have the blank on names all over today. I don't know what's going off my mind. The EPA agreement that we have where about the overflows.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important part to talk about because there's still some unknowns that we still have out there. That is going to be a big problem here over the next 5 years. What happens? I know that many communities, and this community was one of them, that has sent the request to the White House to work to take over a lot of the overflow issues and the algae bloom. What contingencies do we have in place if something comes in that's pretty significant?
Mr. Chairman, we do have some CSO abatement cost factored into the capital improvement plan program over the 5 years. We don't know if it's the right number, but we've got a number incorporated in.
I saw 3.6 million. Is there something in particular with that project, or is that just a guesstimate of what it could be to do some of those work?
One's made that.
Yes.
SSO.
Yes. That one, we put a number in for CSO partial abatement
Okay.
I believe in 2024.
Okay. And then on that line as well, I know that we have the water lines replacements for the central city, which is listed here. That 1.6 million is the estimated cost for the rest of them, or is that only for a portion?
We have water main replacements in the capital improvement program on the water side.
Mhm.
And we have a 5-year cost for water main replacement, we have programmed in to inspect other water towers and paint if necessary, and we have meter replacement.
So my specific question was the water lines that we're going to be replacing in the older part of the community with that list that we requested that you send over. That 1.6 million that's listed on, right on here on that spreadsheet,
Okay,
where it says a large water project of 1.6 million for water line replacements in Central City. Is that to replace all of them, or is that going to be what we just estimate we have to do over the 5-year period? Is that just a
that's
portion?
over the 5-year period.
So it's just a
That
portion
won't
of them, not all of
finish,
them?
but
That won't finish it?
It won't finish,
Okay.
but we need to do a project every year, every
Understood.
2 years. Yeah.
I just wanted to know if that was included to take care of it all within the 5-year, if it was going to be.
Right, it won't quite take care of it
Okay.
in the 5 years.
So I believe my last question is, or maybe, what do we mean by inside versus outside Perrysburg?
We charge a different rate for individuals who live inside the city and have access to our water and sewer than we do for individuals who live outside the city. It's statutory that individuals who are not in the city but have city of Perrysburg water and or city of Perrysburg sewer are charged a higher rate.
So,
So Perrysburg Township residents who get their water from us per the 99-year agreement and separate agreements with either Middleton Township or
Okay.
Perrysburg Township, those people pay 15% on top of our inside rates on water.
but by the same token, those that get city water but use Northwest Sewer, they have a different rate structure as well.
Correct.
Right, okay, thank you. Thank you for that definition.
You got there much faster than I did.
I've been here longer, so.
I do have one question. When it comes to revenue savings, I know that we have passed, and I don't know if the project's completed or not, but the bypass to the Northwest Water Sewer
yeah.
District line, is that taken?
Design, but getting ready to bid.
Okay. Is that taken into account the future savings in this rate study? Because that, if I recall correctly, that's what, $500,000 a year?
We're still in contract negotiations with Northwest Water and Sewer District, and I do not want to commit to that line or the result of those contracts yet.
That we're still gonna have to pay it even though we're doing this work?
We don't think so. We believe that installing this direct connection to Toledo, our math says we save $750,000 a year. The district in conversations during our recent negotiations have a different take on what that fee was for. So that's gonna be hashed out amongst the parties.
Okay. Well, that's a little concerning here at this point with all the funds that we're
We were
putting.
surprised at our last meeting with the district.
We're working on it.
Okay.
Well, and of course, that's a long-term solution anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to make that move.
No, I
So-
don't disagree, but if they're gonna try to find a way to charge us in another end, that's gonna have me a little perturbed. And
So,
I was gonna say, I just was kinda curious if that future potential saving is accounted for in this. I know it's not something that's gonna happen in year 1, 2, or 3, but we should hopefully see that.
I do not know, I mean, the project itself is accounted for. I don't know what savings may be accounted for in the model, in the assumptions.
Okay, that might be a question for our consultant here.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing what you're asking. I do not know, we did not apply any savings to operating costs based on a future project. Certainly could, it could be in the model, but I guess I would err on the side of being conservative.
Yeah.
So if you don't know when that's gonna happen, or if it's gonna happen, or the magnitude, if it does come in, we could adjust then.
Okay.
and maybe this will be my last question. Michael, you had mentioned that the water side would be 773, and then the sewage would be 2% over 5. What, do we have that 4th and 5th year for water projected?
It's 3 for each of the 3 years.
in year 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
So I'm assuming, that 7% on the water side is in large part because of the water. There's some capital in 21, more so, it appears. But
We
then,
are playing catch-up with the city of Toledo costs. We've incurred their increases.
Okay.
Is it 2 years in a row, Alice?
The first, yes, the first was in 2020 and 2021 was the second year of the new contract, yes.
so it's not the capital redoing the central city, it is actually catching up with the water.
It's a combination of both. We have projects that we need to do, and we have to play catch-up with the fact that we've been using essentially our reserves to pay that increase with the city of Toledo because we didn't have new rates in
Understood,
place
okay.
that incorporated their increases.
I think that's it. for me.
Yeah, I would have applied the same increase every year for 5 years for water, but the balance would have gone negative in 22 and 23, so that's why we had to bump it up a bit for those 2 years.
Any other questions? All right, Alice, is there any comments that you have on this? I'm assuming you want us to make a recommendation to take this to council at this point, or?
Well, actually, Mr. Chairman, that would be great. However, the report itself will be presented for the October meeting.
Okay.
And I'll defer to the law director.
Oh, no, I'm up here to support you, Alice.
Oh, okay.
I guess I have 2 questions. Just, Michael, do we have you contracted to appear before city council and explain this as well?
In the same capacity or in person?
In the same capacity?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't gonna drag you from wherever you are. And when we have the official study, are we also bringing him back to this group? Or just to city council?
Well, the report itself would be presented to this committee next month.
With Michael or without Michael? That's just my question, just so they know.
So the report should look similar to the presentation. They'll have, it's gonna have the same results, the same numbers, similar charts. It'll just be a little longer. So if you were to make any recommendations, you can make it on the presentation if you choose, or you can wait until you get the report. But it should follow the same flow and results.
Okay, so we don't want you to do anything today.
Okay, understood.
Although we do have a bill issue.
Okay.
This report took a bit more man hours than we thought it was going to. I think that the results are significant and show us a lot of information we need. But the contract with Michael was not to exceed amount of $44,300, and his billable hours are about to be reached, and we would like to add $9,900 to the contract.
So moved.
You want to explain some of the reasons for that. Obviously, the proposal that was submitted was based on an estimated amount of hours to complete the analysis, the presentations, and the final report. But I do believe we had some technical issues trying to grab information out of our new utility building software that's caused us to expend additional hours beyond the original that were anticipated.
The BSNA software went into effect in first quarter of 2019, and then the end of 2019 going into 2020 was the first end of the year period with that new software. It did take us longer and it delayed the consult. It took us longer to retrieve that information in the information period and then in a format that was usable to them in 2020, and it carried over into 2021. The consultant had taken steps on the information they had first, and then more information was added in 2021 when we were able to retrieve everything that was needed. So then some of that work had to be duplicated with the new information provided.
I do notice on here that it says efforts not to be performed include virtual presentation to city council, but the date on there is for a public utilities meeting. So is the intent to have, by the administration, to have him present at council, or one more time at public utilities, or are both of those, I'm assuming from looking at this that two additional meetings are not included, only one is.
One additional meeting included in your estimate, Michael?
This one, yeah, I have to recheck the document. I mean, having this virtual meeting is not a lot of work. I don't mind throwing in another one if I need to. So
Okay.
whatever's on there, 2 or 3 is fine.
I think
Okay.
it's important the council sees this.
I do too, that's why I wanted to bring this up, and if this includes 2, I think that would be important. So, if that's what he's saying,
That, or we skip the next one, this committee, and just take it all to
yeah,
council, right? So that we keep it at 2.
that's fine.
How important would the next one be to us?
I don't think the information's gonna change, so if you have questions as you take this home with you, you can email those to us, and Michael's been very good about answering any questions that we might have or that Alice might be able to answer, and we can answer any questions as you absorb this. And if it's so significant that we think we need to bring Michael back to committee, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
We'll
make
make
sure
it
that he
work
knows
so
when the
that
next
you all
council
get
meeting
as much
is.
information as you need.
Because the council meeting then would be in November, not October. So, I think that's important to let him know on that. I understand it needs to get paid at this point, so I don't think there's really.
No, I move that we pay the additional.
I'll second.
Anyone oppose? None, so there'll be a full recommendation to council.
Thank you, Michael, thank you, council.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming out, we appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too. All right, so next on the agenda is any other business. Does anybody have anything for the good of the committee? I do have one question. The fire hydrants, I noticed they were painted. I happened to go outside one day and saw the yellow paint around the one outside my house. I was always kind of curious why we paint the top white, and the reason I asked that is we have heavy snowstorms. That white could be a little harder to find if there's enough snow to take it to the top.
I was told, actually by Matt Coma, that sometimes a yellow top versus a white top versus a red top tells people the size of the pipe underneath.
Okay. Just, I'd be curious to know. I noticed that,
But he wasn't sure if that had been applied consistently across the city, or sometimes people think there's a fire hydrant that's ours, but it's really districts,
yeah,
and they might use a different color coding system.
because I noticed that it looks like, I would assume it would be the district on Fort Meigs Road there by Rotary, where all had
Yes.
yellow tops.
Yes. Yep.
And the ones outside my house had white, and so it was kind of curious to know, and if it has to do with the pipe size, that would make more sense. I would just figure that the colors tend to, I guess I would think the colors would be to make it more visible. And heavy snow and white fire
There's a
hydrant.
lot of folks who put the little metal flag.
I was gonna say, it's
Yeah.
For just for
typical.
visibility for plowing and just locating for fire and service during the event of a
No.
emergency service.
I mean, I dig mine out every time it snows, but that's what we were supposed to do, but not everyone can get to do that or has the ability to do that. So,
Yeah, but it typically indicates the size of the line underneath.
okay. That's all I had. Anything else?
Nope.
Not at
No
this
objections? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
moment. Not at this moment.
Okay. No objections, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Alice, we gotta get you a better face